We need shelter. The night a CEO and her daughters saved a broken Marine. Jake Rivers had stopped counting the days. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The old Colorado cabin sat buried under 2 feet of snow, its windows fogged with cold, its silence broken only by the wind howling through the pines. Jake sat at the wooden table, a single oil lamp burning low, a folded letter resting beside his hand. It was addressed to his son Caleb, who lived with Jake's ex-wife in Phoenix. Jake had written it 3 times. This 4th version was the one he would actually leave behind. On the table next to the letter was a pistol, and Jake's hand rested beside it with the quiet certainty of a man who had already made his decision. He was 41 years old, a former Marine with 2 tours in Afghanistan, a body full of shrapnel scars, a mind full of darker things, a business he had lost, savings he had burned through, and a heart so heavy it had stopped feeling like his own. He had served his country, survived its wars, come home to fight a different kind of battle, and lost that one too. He thought of Caleb. He told himself the boy would be better off. He reached for the gun. Then someone pounded on the door. The knock was hard and desperate. 3 sharp blows that cut through the wind and the silence like a gunshot. Jake froze. No one knew he was here. This cabin belonged to his uncle and hadn't been used in 2 years. He waited, thinking it was his imagination. The knock came again, louder this time, and then a voice. "Please, please, is someone there? We need shelter, please." It was a woman's voice, cracked with cold and fear. Jake set the gun down. He stood slowly, crossed the room, and opened the door. The cold hit him like a wall. Standing on the porch were 3 figures, covered in snow, a woman and 2 young girls. The older one maybe 12. The younger one no more than 8. They were dressed for a city, not a mountain. Thin coats, no gloves, sneakers soaked through with ice water. The younger girl was shaking so hard she could barely stand. The woman looked at Jake with eyes that had seen something terrible that night. Eyes that were measuring him. The way people measure strangers, when they have no choice but to trust one. "I'm Sarah," she said. "My daughters, please." Jake stepped back and let them in. He learned her story in pieces. Between cups of hot water, he heated on the gas stove and the blankets. He pulled from the cedar chest in the back room. Sarah Mitchell was the CEO of a defense technology company worth over $1 billion. She had discovered something she was never supposed to find. Internal records showing that 3 board members were illegally selling sensitive military hardware to foreign intermediaries. She had taken the evidence to a federal contact she trusted. That contact had warned her 2 hours ago that the board had found out, and that the men they had hired were not the kind who filed lawsuits. She had grabbed her daughters from her sister's house, 20 miles away, and driven into the mountains, trying to reach the next town. But the road had iced over, and her car had slid into a ditch. She had walked nearly a mile through the snow before she saw the light from Jake's window. Jake listened. Then he stood up, went to the back of the cabin, and pulled out the 2 things he had not touched since he arrived. A go bag he always kept packed out of old habit, and a second firearm, a rifle wrapped in cloth. The Marine did not disappear. He had only been buried. Jake Rivers had spent 15 years learning how to protect people in the worst conditions imaginable, and his body remembered every lesson, even when his mind had forgotten why any of it mattered. He moved the girls to the back room, built up the wood stove, killed the lamp so the cabin went dark from the outside, and then he waited. They came at 2:30 in the morning, 4 of them, armed and moving through the trees with tactical flashlights. Jake had fought in colder places, with less against worse odds, and that night he had something he had not carried into any firefight in Afghanistan. 3 people behind him who needed him to succeed. By dawn it was over. 2 of the men were down and restrained, 2 had retreated, and Sarah had reached her federal contact by satellite phone. Helicopters arrived with the grey morning light. Sarah and her daughters were wrapped in emergency. blankets, and guided toward warmth and safety. Before she stepped aboard, Sarah turned to look at Jake, standing in the snow outside the cabin door. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, "You saved us." Jake shook his head. "You knocked," he said. That was enough. 3 weeks later, Jake sat in a bright office in Denver, across from Sarah Mitchell, who offered him the directorship of corporate security for her company, a role built around protecting the people who worked there. A role with purpose and structure and a future. He thought about the letter on the table, and the gun beside it, and the sound of that knock on the door. He accepted. In the months that followed, Jake found his way back, not to who he was before the wars, but to something better, something steadier. He rebuilt a relationship with Caleb, who started calling him every Sunday. He found that protecting Sarah's team, many of them veterans themselves, gave him the same sense of mission he had carried in uniform, without the weight of loss that had followed him home. Sarah and her daughters came to his first dinner with Caleb. The younger girl, Maya, decided Jake was her favorite person because he made her hot chocolate without being asked. He didn't tell any of them about the letter, or the gun, or what that night had almost been. He didn't need to. He just needed to be there, and he was. If this story moved you, reminded you that one knock on the right door can change everything, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness True Stories, where every story is a reminder that humanity still shows up, even in the darkest, coldest nights.